Talking with David Sheward, author of Rage and Glory, The Volatile Life and Career of George C. Scott. You tell some great stories in the book about his acting career and his personal life. His particular style of acting, you kind of go back to his early years. The other people that worked around him, you tell stories about, they felt better or they elevated their game when they were around him on the stage. I mean, he had that type of presence, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Several people I spoke with and people who I found quoted in other sources said that he was just there from the moment he walked onto the stage or onto the film set. Carl Malden, who co-starred with him in Patton, I interviewed him, and he just said that he was just there and ready to go and brought the whole electricity to whatever scene he was playing.
He had that raspy voice, too. I don't know if I guess he must have had it early in his career on stage. I don't know, but his early film work, you can kind of see that a little bit in The Hustler and Anatomy of a Murder. Of course, Patton, that's the voice everybody kind of associates him with, but he had that voice that really was memorable.
Yes, and it's sort of funny. Patton actually had a high-pitched, kind of an almost squeaky kind of a voice. And when he was doing research for Patton, he physically did everything to resemble him, from wearing a bald wig, shaving his head and wearing a bald wig, and he had a dentist make different teeth so that he would look like Patton. He had putty put on his nose to make the nose look like him. But the voice, he figured he would stick with his own voice, but that would be more effective.
From your research, was that his favorite part to play? I mean, I know that was his most famous film, but was that his favorite role to take over? Because he did do a sequel to it on television many years later.
He was kind of unsatisfied with the movie. He thought it didn't show every aspect of him. Originally he wanted to do a film sequel, but he couldn't get the student. It was like 10 or 15 years later, and he couldn't get anyone interested in doing a movie about it. So he did get it done as a television movie. And between the two, the original Patton and the sequel, I think he was satisfied that he had done it the way he wanted to do it. I don't know if it was his favorite role.
Mm-hmm.
He had a sort of an ambivalent relationship with acting. He would often say that, like when he had had a few drinks, that he really didn't like acting, but that he did it because he felt that it was kind of not a very dignified way for a man to make a living, but that it was the only thing he knew how to do.
It's similar in a way to, I think Marlon Brando felt that way, didn't he? I mean, he really didn't think acting was a great way to make a living, although he was very good at it, right? Similar kind of attitude toward it.
Yes, and they actually are the only two, it's interesting you bring up Brando, they're the only two actors to have refused an Oscar. And they did do one movie together called The Formula, which was not a very good film, and it was more notable for the casting than for the end result.
Of course, George C. Scott, one of those rare actors who succeeded in film and also on the stage. He did a lot of work, of course, in the New York theater. I never got a chance to see him. I know he was playing Sly Fox, I believe, was when I lived up in New York at that time. I didn't get a chance to see him on stage and other work, but a very commanding presence even in his later years, wasn't he?
Yes, he always went back to, he did not like film as an actor's medium because you had to wait, you would shoot scenes out of sequence depending on the convenience of the production. It was really, and you had to wait for the crew and the director to set up all the shots, and there was a lot of waiting in between when you would do the acting. But he always went back to the stage because there, the actor is in control. The actor comes on at 8 o'clock and the show starts, and there's no interruptions except for the intermission, and you do the whole show. His last stage performance was in a production of Inherit the Wind, and he had lots of problems with that. He was dealing with a potentially, what later became a fatal aneurysm, an aortic aneurysm, which later killed him, and a lot of physical ailments, but he got up and did the show, and I saw it, and it was a tremendous performance.
That was at Tony Randall's theater, wasn't it? The Actors Theater.
Yes, it was the National Actors Theater. Tony Randall, who had played in the original production in another part, was his understudy, and at one performance, Scott got up and said, "I have to leave," because he was feeling really sick. And Randall was in the audience and just left on stage and said, "Let's pick it right up."
Wow.
But unfortunately, Scott left the show because he was being sued for sexual harassment by his former assistant. And he was told by his or he produced a medical affidavit from his doctor that said that if he were, the stress could kill him. So he left the production, went to California. Randall took over the role, and unfortunately they had to close earlier than expected, which was quite a tragedy because it would have been the first Randall's company was not making a lot of money, and this would have been the first hit